What's up, everyone? I hope you all are having a very wonderful and blessed day. And if not, I do pray and hope that it gets better because you deserve it. I would like to say thank you for stopping back by the channel and checking out today's video because it means a lot to me and I do appreciate it more than you know. Now, if you're enjoying the content that you're seeing here and you wouldn't mind continuing to help support not only me but the channel as well, please feel free to hit that like and subscribe button and make sure to hit the bell icon so you can stay updated on all of my future content. Now, today we are going to be talking about the topic of why I feel it's a good thing that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League will be focused on next-gen consoles only. So, Suicide Squad was initially announced ahead of DC Fandom way back in August of 2020, and the first gameplay trailer was shown next to Gotham Knights at the actual DC Fandom event a couple of days later. And a lot of fans during that time were quite upset, seeing as how the game would be for next gen only, because while yes, the Xbox was a bit easier to obtain, although still a bit difficult depending on where you were. Getting a PS5 was like trying to find a needle in a country-sized haystack, especially one at normal price. This had a lot of gamers worried, and it did nothing more but add more fuel to the conversation of if whether or not these newer games should also be released on last-gen consoles, so that the gamers who couldn't get a next-gen console could still be reached and not left out of the race. Now, as time goes on, right, technology will continue to improve on our consoles and the older ones will eventually fade out. There's no way around it. It's literally the test of time. And the games in, comparison will continue to grow and evolve in how they play and function as well, marking the need for these newer consoles, this newer technology so they can support each other and these games can continue raising the bar for just how massive and great and fun that they could eventually be, right? Imagine running a game like Suicide Squad or Cyberpunk on a PlayStation 2. Now you gotta explain to your parents not only how, but why there's a ball of fire shaped like a console on your bedroom floor. Like, take Destiny for example, right? It was stated by Rob Adams, who was the lead world artist for the game, that because it was on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, as well as PS4 and Xbox One, they were extremely limited in exactly what they could do with the game. Like, for example, the Cosmodrome, which if you've ever played Destiny, that's the main area that you travel to whenever you go to Earth. The Cosmodrome was meant to be 5 to 10 times bigger than what it actually ended up being. In Division, as another example, that pretty much ended up releasing with a downgraded PC port in order for it to keep up with consoles, because the developers they didn't give a name for the source, but it was someone from the developer team, but they didn't state their name on the record. They stated that the developers felt like it wouldn't be right if PC was way ahead of the game. They didn't feel like it would be the right thing to give PC, like this major advantage over console. Like, PC has all of these things that we don't, and they're just leaving us in the dust. It would be like giving the console players an inferior version, and that was something that they didn't want to do. So that was the reason for why the downgraded PC port was even a thing to begin with. Now, people do tend to speak about availability for all gamers, and I agree 100%. But in the same breath, a good portion of those people don't really understand how calling for a last-gen copy of a game has the chance of damaging a game that you care greatly about. When the developers are in the studio making these choices, they're thinking about what's the best course of action for their game so that it can prosper, right? And one thing to know is that you can't make everyone happy, but you have to do what you have to do. More than often, it's a cause of a studio. Well, I won't say more than often because I'm not a developer, but in some cases that we do know of that are definitely public, it's a cause of a studio trying to create the game for what can be considered as outdated hardware, right? Trying to essentially upscale the game as much as possible, but the hardware that not with the hardware that it may not necessarily be meant for, but the hardware that is going to be on may not be as strong as it has to be in order to properly handle the game. Cyberpunk is a great example, but tricky because at release, right? PS4, from what I hear, was horrible, absolutely horrible. I have a friend whose Xbox One was actually bricked from playing Cyberpunk. Next gen consoles still had a surplus of issues, but at the very least it was playable to an extent, right? And then you go ahead and look at PC, and the game's not running well on there either. This is a game that was meant for 3 different generations of consoles. It has seen 3 different generations of consoles. It was held back by the previous generation's hardware each time, because the technology and the hardware kept changing, and they were trying to adapt to the new stuff coming in and making the game even bigger, while still trying to essentially adjust and keep it as dialed down as possible so that the last gen consoles can still run it. And that hurt the game in so many areas, because with Cyberpunk, it's a sad thing. It's a very sad thing, because like I've said this before and I'll say it again, one of the best things about Cyberpunk for me is the story. I did enjoy it. The main issues with the game were all of the bugs and glitches that it was unfortunately riddled with. If it wasn't for that, Cyberpunk could have been an even greater game than, you know, what it Cyberpunk would have more than lived up to the hype that was garnered for it if it wasn't for all of the bugs and glitches that were essentially bogging it down. Now, Suicide Squad is making the smart choice by only focusing on next gen, because, you know, this allows them to push the game to its limits, and they don't really have to hold back in the lab in order to include outdated systems. Now, bugs and glitches, that will always be around, right? It's simply just a part of creating games. It happens. We don't want it to, but it does. No game has ever been created truly perfect, and that's fine, because bugs and glitches can always be patched and fixed and more. What's important is getting the game that the players were meant to get, getting the game that everyone can play and enjoy. It's been way too many times where a game was released and we find out that the original plans were different. We didn't get the game that we were supposed to get. And this game that we got was way far off from the initial idea. I can't think of any other games off the top of my head that would essentially match this example. The one I do have is movie related, and I don't want to use it because it's too on the nose, but it is a good one, so I'm gonna use it anyway. And this is one I'm sure a lot of you would understand. But the first Suicide Squad movie with, you know, Deadshot and El Diablo and whatnot, the different roster. So we have the theatrical cut, and then we have the Ayer cut, which supposedly, according to Ayer himself, scared the higher up so bad that they ended up changing the entire movie. Like Ayer has said it himself, the theatrical cut is not his movie. That is not his vision. Will he get his own, you know, like Snyder cut, Ayer cut type of situation? Who knows? I don't know. But essentially, again, yeah, that's the best example that I could give for that, right? Ayer himself has spoken to that many times. Forcing out a last-gen version of Suicide Squad would essentially be close to that, in the sense of the developers will be limited in as to what they can do with their vision, because they have to work to try to include everybody else that's not on next gen. They have to work to include outdated hardware, which in turn will just overall not be good for their project, right? Plus, it doesn't really matter to some people if it's next gen only or not, if we're being honest, because they're still going to find issues with it, and they're going to blow it out of the water depending on exactly what it is. Now, people still say the same thing about Gotham Knights, and I will say this here: Gotham Knights is not a bad game. Does it have its clear myriad of issues? Yes, it does, but it's still a good game. It's even more enjoyable for friends. I enjoy the game for what it is, but people have been saying the same thing about Gotham Knights. It's crazy how this came out in 2022 on PS5. Your Arkham Knight dropped in 2015 on PlayStation 4, and that looks way better. People have been running that argument into the ground for years, and what people don't mention is the fact that the PC version released in an unplayable state, and this led people to believe that the console version was ported over to PC, and that's what caused all of those issues that they were having. I'm not saying that it's true, I'm only speaking on what I've been hearing. In the console version, however, did come with more than its fair share of glitches, like the leaderboards being offline, thugs falling through the floor, and so on and so forth. Now, granted, that was released only on the current gen consoles for that time, but For as pretty as the game looked, it did have its clear issues, but it's still a great game overall. Don't get it twisted. I love Arkham Knight. Arkham Origins is my favorite in the series though. Now, as I stated earlier, I believe that Rocksteady choosing to go next gen only was the smart move, 100%. And I'm curious to see if Suicide Squad lives up to all of the hype that has been getting. All of my Captain Boomerang fans, drop a boomerang emoji in the comments and let me know y'all out there. I also want to point this out. I've been a Boomerang fan before this. I've been a Boomerang fan before this game, and I've been a King Shark fan before this game. So those are my characters. I'm calling it now. If we play together, just know I'm not getting off Boomerang or King Shark for anything. Y'all just gonna have to catch me on an off day when I'm working on somebody else. But with all that being said, that's gonna go ahead and mark the end of this video. I hope that you guys have had a great time here. Let me know down in the comments below. Do you agree with me? Do you or not? Do you think it should be next gen only? Do you think last gen should get copies? How do y'all feel about Captain Boomerang, the best playable character in the game as of right now? And if y'all did enjoy the video, again, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and smack that notifications bell so that you'll never miss out on any of my future Suicide Squad content, and I will catch y'all in the moonlight. Peace.
Trying to the big, trying to live life. Pull it to the club with the bottles on ice. Need a back end by the end of the night. I'm an artiste and a social light. Trying to do it big, trying to live life. Pull it to the club with the bottles on ice. Need a back end by the end of the night. I'm an artiste and a social light.